Algorithm Podcast, Season 1, Episode 3. A podcast for marketers who don't just follow trends, they question them. A safe haven where guests spill their guts on their biggest mistakes, regrets, and surprising wins. I'm your host, the conversion surgeon, Kirk Money, the digital doctor, and today I have the honor and privilege of sharing the stage with Gonzalo, the myth, the man, the legend. If you don't know about Gonzalo, here's a brief cheat sheet about him. He's the head of performance at Ad Conversion, which in my opinion is one of the top ad agencies on earth in the Milky Way. Gonzalo has managed millions upon millions of dollars in ad budgets and has no doubt generated billions upon billions for his clients. Well, it's actually another really cool fact about Gonzalo is that he gives away actionable advice almost every single week on LinkedIn. So if you want to know what the creme de la creme of digital ad marketing is doing, make sure to check them out. And today, folks, we're going to break the matrix. Gonzalo, welcome to the show, buddy.
Welcome, Kirk. Nice being here.
No, man, it's all true. Please tell the world, tell the world a little bit more about yourself and where they can find you.
Yeah, as Kirk was saying, I'm the head of performance at Ad Conversion, a B2B advertising agency / academy / community. I can even name everything. And I'm based in Lisbon, Portugal. And yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn posting tips on a weekly basis. Possibly, who knows, on two times a week basis. Getting there.
Awesome, man.
And
Thank you for sharing
really
that.
Excited to be here.
Now let's get into the meat and potatoes about why you're here. The wins, the losses, and the lessons most marketers don't have the guts to talk about, but you do. You ready? All right, first question. What would you say is the biggest mistake you ever made in marketing, and what did you learn from it?
I've made quite a few, to be honest with you. But if I had to name the biggest mistake that I look back and I feel I cringe about is thinking I can control how prospects behave. Like, just when you think about it, like, how can you behind a laptop be controlling how people behave just because you're putting ads in front of them, right? And that to me was the biggest mistake I've ever made. I mean, it might have worked in the past, especially in my B2C days, but in B2B, that doesn't work. Especially nowadays, it's even complex. It's getting more complex by the day. So I would say that was the biggest mistake or biggest presumption too that I made in the past. Thinking I can put an ad, if Kirk, you engage with an ad, let me get you this ad in front of you because this will get you closer to the conversion. Yeah, that's nonsense.
What's one marketing trend you fell for that turned out to be a total waste of time?
One trend that you need to be on every platform. As a brand, you see that all the time, like, you need to be on Facebook, you need to be on LinkedIn, Reddit, Quora. Yes, that's true in my opinion to an extent, but most brands and SaaS brands sometimes can't afford to be on all channels, don't have the creative teams to be on all channels, don't have the budgets to be on all channels. But that's the trend that every marketer feels like they need to pretty much follow. But I honestly think that's a bit waste of time because you're just splitting your energy, your resources across multiple channels. And
let's stay on this one for just a little bit longer.
In your experience,
you deal with all types of different brands, all type of SaaS, and I'm sure you get that request all the time. I want to be everywhere. I need my ads everywhere. What do you tell them? How do you give them the news? How do you give them the gift of feedback that, hey, maybe you don't need to be everywhere? What's your approach?
Yeah, it's pretty much taking a step back and walking them through the basics. Like, first of all, understanding what's your budget, and understanding why do you want to be on all channels. Because maybe it's just because someone internally said, hey guys, I've heard brands are seeing success on TikTok. I'm seeing people on LinkedIn talking about it. Should we be there? What can we do? Let's try it. And sometimes you can even have the resources to create videos for TikTok. You're just repurposing stuff that works on, Instagram stories, even LinkedIn. And so it's taking a step back, understanding your budget, understanding your goals, trying to understand a bit more on the reason why you want to do it in the first place. And yeah, sometimes when you walk them through the numbers, they see that they can't afford it, and then it makes sense, and that just gives them ammunition to show internally, like, hey guys, this is awesome, but data shows that we can't run ads there right now, or if we do, we need a small budget, we need to prepare it more in advance to do so, especially when it comes to video content, because that's the biggest gap that I see often.
What would you say is an unpopular marketing opinion that you swear by, and why?
Yeah, you've probably seen me say this on LinkedIn already, but I don't think SaaS brands need to invest that much on gating content. And I'm bringing a new topic to the discussion, actually, like gating articles in feeds, because it's you most of the time you see people talking about running and gated content. And for those of you that don't know, it's pretty much, instead of forcing people to pretty much submit a contact form to get a resource, you're just handing out the resource and not asking for anything in return. Just focus on getting that content consumed. But the other thing too is gating the articles. Like, you're running ads, you're paying for people to click on an ad. Think about it, like, here's an ad, click on it, go to my website, go through my, sometimes, I don't know even how long, blog article, and you're expecting people with the attention spans that they have right now because of TikTok, even LinkedIn videos, to consume the blog article and get the key message that you want them to consume. I think it's not as unpopular as it was maybe a couple of months ago, but I think that's the biggest one to me. Like, there's no point currently with the resources you have as a paid advertiser, especially, to be forcing people to click on an ad, going to your site, consume content, consume an article, if you can get that content in front of them in feed. Especially knowing, like, I don't know, 60%, 70% of the time your ads will be shown on mobile anyway. So no one has the time, no one has the mental space to go to a website and check a blog article that more often than not isn't even that well optimized. So that's the
hard truth.
Would
you say it's fair to say
rant here.
You want to reduce the clicks, you want to make it as easy as possible for the prospect to consume your content?
Yeah, for sure. Especially knowing, like, on a good day you have about your click-through rate. So someone clicking on your ad going to your site is about 2% on a good day. So 98% of the people will see your ad, won't click, but that doesn't mean your impression isn't meaningful. It just means that, yeah, I saw it, I consumed it for about 3, 4, 5 seconds, and I move on. So if you can get that information in front of them, you don't actually need them to go to your site afterwards. Because trust me, and people are well educated, and depending on each brand's ICP, these folks, if they know you can solve their problem, they'll go after you. They will see how they can get in touch with you. They will check your website, they'll check your case studies. It's not like you don't need to put it in front of them and forcing them to go to your site just to get that content consumed.
What's a marketing best practice that you think is actually terrible advice?
This is a hot one. Replicating what your competitors are doing or other market leaders. Like, I don't know, maybe it's my bubble, but if you're a marketer working in SaaS, you've most likely heard or seen Cognism. They pop out in your feed all the time. I know they pop out on mine. And yeah, those ads are pretty cool. I see different ads all the time. And then you see, okay, but we want to do it like they are doing. And sometimes they were a client of ours in the past. And if you think about the marketing team that these guys have and the expertise to actually afford to pretty much run all those cool ads, different concepts, all that good stuff, not every brand can do it. But just because you're seeing all this conversation about going ungated, and I just said it's actually the right direction and the right thought process, but yeah, baby steps, not, let's go from gating everything, asking for contact information on all our content, and now let's do it like Cognism. It's not like that. It would be awesome if it could, but yeah, it's not. So it's a terrible advice in that regard, because each brand is unique. Each brand has their strengths and their weaknesses. So it's more, and that's how I try to help my clients to, like, let's first of all understand your weaknesses, your strengths, and capitalize on those. Yes, we don't want your weaknesses to continue being a weakness all the time. Let's improve. but it's unrealistic to just see what others are doing and try to replicate. Also too, because sometimes other brands are doing the bad things, and just because they are huge, you think those are the right stuff. And yeah, that's
I love it.
you're getting
Let's stay on
already.
brand. If you were starting a new brand today and we gave you $10,000, how would you spend it?
Start with the basics. First of all, validating, defining my value proposition, understanding, first of all, who I want my product to, who do I want consuming my product, and if it's a SaaS tool, awesome. But first of all, understanding your ICP and what pressing problems can you actually solve. They need to be pressing, otherwise you have multiple solutions already. And then it's about building an audience. And I'm seeing this all the time, like our founder Silvio does it too, like building in public. And you have that cool brand too that pops up on my feed all the time, Fibler, if I'm not mistaken, from Adam. I want to make sure I'm calling out the right people. And they are building in public. So you don't actually need to have like your product figured out at once. You can have your MVP, have a small list of people pretty much testing your product. You're making the tweaks as they are utilizing it. And only once that's figured out, you actually think about promoting it and potentially getting a landing page designed, produced. So not at any point you understood that I talked about putting ads behind or putting money behind some ads. You first of all want to define and validate your product, start building an audience. Only then you start putting more resources into actually promoting it. And maybe 10K isn't enough to get the tool off the ground or to start building it, but that's at least how I would do it if I was in that scenario. Thankfully, I haven't gone through it yet, but yeah, you don't want to put money behind something
this is absolutely
not
gold
even
for
sure
everybody who's
it can
listening.
work.
Gonzalo, again, you've managed millions upon millions upon millions, and that's probably being generous of ad budget. And what you're saying is, hey, I wouldn't actually start with ads. I would start with laying down the foundation, making sure I understood that first. So take it from the person who's controlling the money, who sees the data. That is like just really awesome advice.
Yeah, because like you can have the best agency in the world, and in this case maybe ours, like the sneaking it in there, but running your ads, designing your ads, but ultimately if the product sucks, it won't do any magic. And I've had that experience in the past in my previous agency where you might have different levels of clients where their product isn't even figured out or validated yet. So now they are looking at paid ads to be like the magic trick that will get them instant cash. And it's not like that, especially if you're already with the rope on your neck and you're looking for paid to be your salvation.
What would you say is the most ridiculous client request you've ever gotten?
Yeah, I've got a few, but I would say if I had to name it, I would say anytime a client comes to me and says like, hey guys, can you launch this campaign? And we review it and the campaign doesn't really make that much sense. It's not a lot in terms of not being, let me unpack this a bit, in terms of not being aligned with the client goals, like maybe we don't even have the budget to afford a campaign that isn't aligned with the paid strategy. And then I follow up and be like, okay, but what's the thought process? Oh, I just got this internally and I don't know, the CEO wants to launch it. My IR thinks this will perform really well, or worse than, I get it, but it's worse like, oh, we just want to get it out because we spent like 2-3 months designing these assets. So this has to go out because we put a lot of effort into it. So that to me is ridiculous, and maybe it's not as bad as you would think, I would say, but it's ridiculous in the way that sometimes you're doing it in the wrong way. You should first try to understand what do these guys need to get me closer to the goals, and then okay, let's get them the assets. But in some cases, and that's the ridiculous piece to me, it's the opposite. We start by designing it, we don't say anything, and now, hey guys, here it is, this has to go live just because. Sometimes it's like, oh, let's just get it live, get some dollars behind it, so we have the data to pause it and then show internally that it didn't work. So that's, so you're just already launching it with the thought process of, oh, it won't work most likely, but now I can show internally that it didn't. So to me, that's the biggest thing that I hate. I get it, but
And I think this is what separates ad
triggers me a
conversion
little
and
bit.
especially you from all those other ad agencies out there in the world. So many ad agencies, you'll just be like, hey, I need this ad live. The CEO wants it. And they'll say, yes, done. They'll launch it. But what you do is you're coming back and you're having a conversation, reminding people, hey, what's the goal? What's the North Star? What's the strategy behind this? You know, that's a different level of support and partnership that you don't get everywhere else. That's really awesome.
Yeah, and sometimes clients are like, "Hey guys, I appreciate it, but I still need this to go live, and we'll do it, of course. Like we're not keeping it gatekeeping this, but yeah, just making sure the client understands it. And in most cases they do. We have the luck of working with pretty cool clients, but yeah, sometimes even then can control
Nice.
these internal
What's one
priorities
piece of
that
marketing
arrive.
advice? What's one, sorry. What's one piece of marketing advice you give that sounds wrong but actually works?
You don't need to be overly concerned with driving traffic from paid ads to your website. And now I'm talking about paid social ads. With Google search, Bing, that's a different story. But you don't really need to be that overly concerned. Yes, if people resonate, they will most likely click and try to learn more about it. But ultimately, you want people to consume your message. Knowing that, and LinkedIn provides really cool metrics already, but knowing people look at your ads for about what, 3, 4, 5 seconds, just making sure they can actually read your ad and understand what you do, and then they can move on. And then it's a matter of repetition. And I mean, you have different stats, like 5% of your, what is it, 5% of your ICPs in market at any given point. So think about the other 95. So, and then you also have the stat about people when they are actually moved to being in market, they only start the research based on a short list they already have. So if you're only focused on the 5%, you won't even make that short list when the time comes. So that's why I don't think brands and marketers need to be overly concerned with driving a lot of traffic from paid social to the website. It's more about your inputs and the content you put out that should be concerning you, in my opinion.
What's one marketing skill that's made the biggest difference in your career?
Not sure if this is a skill, but I would say really focusing on mastering the ad channels. This is like, and this was early on in my career, just being super analytical, mastering the ad channels as much as I could. And back then it was simply like Facebook and Google, not even LinkedIn when I started, but just making sure I mastered the ad channels. But then this only got me to a certain point. Like this made the biggest difference and impact early in my career. But thankfully, even in my early days, I realized that I didn't want to be one of those guys or PPC managers that just clicks on ads or clicks on buttons. Sorry. I wanted to be a level above and think a bit more on a strategy side. And mastering the ad channels got me to a certain point, but then understanding that, okay, I can't just be the guy that masters the channels. I need to be on a different level. It started opening more doors to me and allowing me to stand out on my companies, and that got me here at Conversion. And then just obsessing with like being determined and obsessing over the stuff. I know it wasn't just one, but it's hard to
I
name
gotta
just one
ask.
thing
Let's
that
say
made a difference.
I'm a new marketer. I want to do ads. Where do I go? What's a resource that you recommend?
Oh, I think I know what you're doing. Yeah, you would go if you're a brand new marketer. I would say LinkedIn is a great starting point, and just trying to follow as many people as you can, and just being a sponge at absorbing the information. And then if you want to be a B2B marketer, you go to that conversion to all the free courses, the community, and yeah, you learn from other peers. But regardless, it's making sure you're following the right people, be curious, and then on top of just getting the theoretical, not sure if that's the best word, but the theory, on top of the theory, you also want to get your hands dirty and actually test the stuff you see people talking about. Because you see a lot of different things, everyone has their unique POV, and it's not a matter of being right or wrong. It's just, again, what works for Kirk might not work for me. So it's like, okay, let's actually give this a try and test it out. Having that curiosity of not just checking what others are doing, but also try to do it yourself and implementing it, I guess comes a long way.
Very cool. Gonzalo, you have one hill to die on, and you got to make it count. So I have to know, what's the one marketing hill you would die on and why?
I mean, I feel like I'm repeating myself a bit, but gating the content. I like, I, from the data that I've seen, I know it's hard as a marketer, and just being completely honest, I know it's, especially if it's an internal team at a bigger company, it's hard to be like, hey guys, we're used to getting 300, 400, 500 leads a month, and all of a sudden we'll stop getting all, and by leads I mean just form submissions, like the most basic definition. So it's, and then just be like, hey, maybe sales team you won't see as many leads come through because we're going ungated. We're not asking for people to submit our forms anymore. We're just letting them submit it when they're ready. And I know that's scary, and the sales teams won't like it because it's much more comfortable to sit on a glorified database of folks, and that you can easily show internally, hey, we're targeting the right people. Look at this VP who downloaded our content. But ultimately, then what? Because then I look at the data, and being a bit more technical here, like, you get a ton of leads, yes, but when you look at, okay, but how many deals are getting opened from those leads? 1%, maybe 2, 5 if you're lucky. And then when you start making, like, the expression that I use all the time, like, the math doesn't math when you get to that point. So in reality, the challenge is, if you're suggesting this internally, your team might be expecting, okay, so how are you planning on replacing these X amount of leads we usually get by ungating? But that's a big misconception. You don't have to. You need to replace the number of deals that are getting opened, or you need to increase those. So you need to look at about, okay, I don't need to drive 500 leads. How can ungating the content get me to 5 opportunities, 10 opportunities, like 1 million in pipeline? That's what you need to be aiming for. You won't get as many leads for sure, but ultimately it's about your bottom funnel metrics, and that's the biggest hill that I'll die on.
If you could have any other profession besides the one you have now, what would it be?
That's a tough one because I don't think about that often. But I know I'm super into watching MasterChef, and I know, like, back in my head, deep in my head, I know that if I put the energy based on my level of obsessiveness and consistency to actually try to be a good chef, I think I'll nail it. My girlfriend laughs at me because I don't really cook, but just by seeing them, and yeah, that you have a lot of analogies between a kitchen at a high level restaurant and a marketing agency. So yeah, I think I would be a really cool chef. Maybe not a Michelin star chef, but and I see you laughing because what the fuck, this guy doesn't cook, and he's telling me to do that. Either that, or like on the other level, like a personal trainer. I go to the gym, and yeah, I like reading about that stuff. And when you think about it, both professions have some level of obsessiveness, consistency, discipline, which, again, going back to the stuff that helped me get to this place, is it's what helped me get here, pretty much. So that's why I
think you got a business right there. So here's what I'm picturing. One, you open up your restaurant, the clients will come, they'll eat the food, they'll gain a little bit of weight, and then when they're leaving, you're like, hey, I can be your trainer, full circle. That's great. You said it in the beginning. Say it again. Where can people find you if they want to look you up on the Matrix?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Gonzalo Prates on LinkedIn. I mean, it's easier to see the name down below, but yeah, I post tips on a weekly basis. Again, if you're in B2B SaaS, you can go in the conversion community, and we also share some tips there, some learning, some experiments. So it's a more a next level community in that regard. Like you get some tips on LinkedIn, yes, but then the good stuff is there. Also too, because of the people that aren't as comfortable with posting on LinkedIn because there are so many eyes and it's a smaller community. So yeah, you can find me in both. And
awesome.
Yeah, happy
Thank you,
to learn
Gonzalo.
about
everybody who's listening. I highly recommend Stock Gonzalo. He's one of the most curious and obsessed B2B ad marketers I have ever met in the history of time. Thank you for joining me on the show. And Gonzalo, world, I'll see you all in the Matrix.